Alright, so welcome back to another review. Now, you've all heard me rave about the LCD-X in the previous video, and I was truly astonished at how great they sound. Well, now it's time to compare them to my good old reference headphones, the wait. These ain't my HD600s. Well, now it is time to compare them against my good old reference headphones, the Sennheiser HD600. A longtime staple in the audio enthusiast community. Now, I do want to preface, right before we jump in, I know most of you are going to write down in the comments, well, of course, the LCD-Xs are better than the HD600s, they're about quadruple the price. Now, this comparison isn't about figuring out which of these sound better, it's about highlighting the differences between the two, including the timbre of certain sounds, and overall presence of certain regions in the frequency response. So, calm yourselves, please. But anyway, without further ado, let's begin. So right off the bat with the contents, the primary differences between these two are the type of cables they include, the packaging itself, and the warranty and authenticity cards that come with the LCD-Xs. Now, the OG HD600s come with a much longer straight cable that can be converted from a 3.5mm termination to a 1/4 inch using the included adapter. Now, the X's cable is a shorter braided cable of a much higher quality with a 1/4 inch termination. So build quality wise, both of these offer an excellent finish. I mean, they're, for their own price points. Now, the HD600s feature a mostly plastic build with a little bit of metal here and there, including that's mostly in the grills itself and the bridge between the headband and the cups themselves. Now, on the other hand, the LCD-Xs feature a mostly metallic build, pretty much everywhere you see this headphone. I think the cup itself right here is plastic, metal, metal, metal. Now, the headband suspension strap and the pads themselves are pretty much a leather type of material here. Now, both of these do sit at a stark difference in price here. So, objectively speaking, the LCD-Xs definitely win this matchup, right? But on an individual price to quality ratio standpoint, both of these are absolutely excellent for the price. Now, in terms of comfort, the tides do turn here in favor of the HD600s. Because these are significantly lighter than the X's, they have an advantage when it comes to comfort. Despite the fact that most people argue that the HD600 line is really uncomfortable initially, I found that my HD600s did, in fact, get a lot more comfy over time as they started to stretch out and the pads themselves started kind of softening up a bit. So it's partially the headphone, but it's actually the pads. For what it's worth, I also have the HD660S2s right here, which are made out of the newer plastic. And look, I've been trying those out, right? Despite my best efforts, even after having used them for quite some time now, the HD660S2s, they haven't gotten any more comfortable for me, man. Like, I've been trying to stretch those things. I've been trying to stretch them. I've been trying to use the bookcase method, and they just don't get any more comfortable. They're still really, really clampy, just very, very annoying to use overall. For me, they're actually less comfortable than the LCD-Xs, despite being significantly more lightweight. Now, since the LCD-Xs are in fact made of metal, you can definitely feel that weight on your head while wearing them. However, thanks to the way the pads are designed, which is one of those kind of like angular pad designs where it's thinner up front but a lot thicker in the back, I actually find it easier to wear these over time than the HD660S2s. And they actually get a pretty decent grip on your head too. So while they may not be as comfy as the HD600s, they are actually more comfortable than you would expect. Now, talking in terms of amplification here, surprisingly, the massive 106mm planar magnetic drivers on the LCD-Xs are actually easier to drive than the dynamic drivers on the HD600s. On the THX AAA 789, I drive the LCD-Xs at around 11 on gain 1 using single-ended. On the other hand, I drive the HD600s at around 10-ish, 1030 on gain 2 using single-ended. Now, using the Lightning dongle on my iPhone 13 Pro, I drive the LCD-Xs at around 10 out of 16, while I drive the HD600s at around 12 to 14 out of 16. Now, there are certain benefits to having easier and harder to drive headphones, including extended amp scaling with higher impedance cans, which the HD600s are very well known for, but that's a topic for another video. So let's jump into the sound portion. Quick disclaimer, the following comparisons will be made in stock form. No EQ will be used for this comparison whatsoever. Now, let's jump in. So on the bass side of things, bass guitars, the HD600 are kind of have them like woolly, but they have good texture. They kind of sit in the background, whereas the LCD-Xs definitely position them a little bit closer compared to the rest of the instruments, which offer much better texture to the growl, the girth, and the volume of the bass guitars. Neither tend to really suffer from the slide that occurs at the 15-second mark of Get Lucky by Daft Punk and Pharrell Williams, though I wouldn't say either of these do it perfectly either. Both keep the note's texture through and through, thankfully. And on a side note, on bass guitars, I actually got myself a Yamaha 5-string bass a few days ago, and it is an absolute beauty, but enough bragging. Also, let me know down below if you're interested in me like trying to do some covers or something, like either on the cello, the bass guitar, or the electric guitar. If you are interested in that, leave a comment down below, and yeah, if I get enough attention, I'll go ahead and do it. So back on topic, electronic bass guitars. Now the X's are leagues better than the HD600s in this category. In Alive, the Z Remix, the HD600 present the higher end of the bass spectrum decently, but there really is no rumble to the notes, especially in the descent at around 1 minute 58 seconds. The X's, on the other hand, sound a lot punchier in the mid-bass region, and while there is a bit of a roll-off happening at the 158 mark, there's definitely a lot more presence and texture going on to that note. Now in Night Call by Kavinsky, yes, the Sigma Male song, it's even more apparent. Through the entirety of the track, there is a constant humming from the low end. On the HD600s, this humming is almost non-existent, but is somewhat present. Now the X's make that pop a lot more and give the track a buttery, like a rumble, and it definitely needs that rumble. They don't blow it out of proportion either, thankfully. If you are a bass head, I don't want you to get your expectations way too high and think this is gonna, just knock your socks off when it comes to bass quantity. Now for kick drums, once again, the X's do a much better job at showcasing the kick drums and really providing the rumble and heft that comes with them, much better than the HD600s do. If you are an HD600 longtime user, you'll definitely want to get to experience what it is you've been missing from that low end in a non-bass head type of way. Now, getting into the mids, vocals are definitely more forward and stand out on the HD600 as opposed to the LCD-Xs. If you are someone who really likes paying attention to the vocals and the lyrics in a track, the HD600s will cater to that a little bit better than the Xs. They'll really get to put the singer in front of the instruments, for better or worse. The X's, on the other hand, still have some really sweet vocals and are absolutely detailed, but they do mesh with the rest of the instruments a little more, as opposed to these, where it stands out, has its own presence in the stage apart from all the other instruments. Now, I will say the sound of the cello will be a bit of a toss-up between both of these, depending on what you're looking for. I still think my favorite rendition of the cello is going to be the X's performance here. They sound so buttery and rich, while the HD600s sound a tad thinner by comparison. However, now that plucking of the pizzicato, the grazing of the bow of the strings, all of that does sound a bit finer and well detailed on the HD600. So brass instruments, they're going to pop a little more on the HD600. They'll sound a bit more lively and energetic as opposed to the X's, which, while they definitely do sound excellent and detailed, definitely pull them back more than the HD600s do. Now the buzzing of the lower brass instruments, those low notes that lower brass instruments play, will have more texture to it on the HD600, and trumpets will have a bit more of a like a honk to them as well. So yeah, mids aren't exactly the forte of the LCD-Xs, but they definitely don't lack on them either. The HD600, on the other hand, definitely, you know, display them in spades. Now, jumping into some treble here, the HD600 will bring the treble a little more forward than the X's. The cymbals and hi-hats stand out a little better and have more of a silvery timbre to them, something I really enjoy when it's done tastefully, but not overdone and like harsh or shrill. Now, sibilants will actually be about the same for both of these. They both do a great job of bringing the 6K mark as forward as possible without going overboard and making it sound very harsh. I definitely enjoy the tuning of the HD600s a little more in the highs, but it can't be denied that the quality of the highs themselves are a little better on the X's. They simply sound, you know, smoother, more refined, albeit a tad darker and recessed. Now, a great example of that here, Summit by Skrillex featuring Ellie Goulding. Both headphones get to show the echoes and silvery timbre of the cymbals here, but you can definitely track it for a bit longer on the HD600s due to the tuning. A bit of an upside to the X's though, the echoes themselves do sound a little more like spaced out and really make you feel that openness and emptiness that the track is supposed to convey, but more of that in sound, stage, and imaging. So, without a doubt, this is an area where the LCD-Xs excel far better than the HD600s. They're just a lot wider, so they're able to give you that feeling of, for example, like in Summit, being on the summit of a mountain and imagining, you know, that emptiness as you look down below, looking at the chasm that you climbed to get up to the mountain. The X's also blow the HD600s out of the water in terms of imaging capabilities. Again, the HD600s were never inherently bad at imaging, but their narrow soundstage limits what they can do when it comes to the depth and the perception of different sounds in the track. To conclude here, the LCD-Xs come across a little more like a pair of upgraded HD650s as opposed to HD600s. They have that more present and warm low end with less mid presence and for the most part less present treble, with that minor peak at like 6K, 7.6K, 10K, etc. Now, do I recommend the LCD-Xs as an upgrade to the HD600s? Honestly, not quite. They are better in most categories, yes, but the core elements that the HD600s are known for are not really present in the Xs. The mid-range lacks that presence and vibrance. The treble could leave you wanting a little more for some like mixing or monitoring purposes, and above all, they're too heavy to use them like you would an HD600. No, you really can't just like look around everywhere, put your head down, stand up and go grab something, turn on the lights, something like that, because they are going to slide off. A little bit, but they're definitely going to slide off. Whereas the HD600s, they just clamp to your head and don't go anywhere. See, for example, I'm wearing them right now. You know, looking around, it's perfectly fine. I feel a good enough clamp force, can't complain. Looking up, not terrible. Looking down, and there they are. Now you put on a pair of HD600s and perfectly fine. Looking up, no complaints. Looking down, no sliding whatsoever. Now, that said, I really do enjoy the LCD-Xs for being at my desk, whether it's standing or sitting, as long as you're not moving around too much. And I think these are here to stay in my collection for quite a little bit of time. But anyway, that's going to conclude my opinions on the LCD-Xs versus the HD600s. Let me know down below if you want another answer to a question that I didn't get to answer here on this review. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, ciao.